I think that once you feel like you're self-confident that, you know what, like this is my beat and this is like what I want to focus on and I really want to educate around and I want to be like that resource for that specific thing, then that can help you really have that business person mindset and to strategize moving forward in the longevity of your business of like, okay, well, what are ways can I expand out on that? Or how can I really help, my readers more? Or like, what story do I want to tell and build and not just make each piece one-offs, but how they connect and grow from each other.
That was Jessica Gavin, and this is episode number 163 of the Chopped Podcast. Hey everyone, I'm Marley of the blog Namely Marley. I am your host, and this is the Chopped Podcast. This is the podcast designed for people just like you, bloggers who love food. I like to think of this podcast as a place for encouragement. We also have interviews and tips and strategies and just lots of, soul-rich food that we can all enjoy to help us on our journey to being better food bloggers or bloggers with an emphasis on food, whatever it is that you choose to, however you choose to describe yourself. How are you doing today? I hope you're having a great day. I know things have been really busy on this end. You may not have heard from me as much as usual. One of the main reasons for that is because I have some drum roll here. I actually have got a book deal, so that was pretty exciting for me. If I could have waved my magic wand, it couldn't have been better because I really love the idea that I actually did not pitch this book. This book came to me, and so that feels really good. And it's also part of a series. So one of the things I like about that is that I don't have to put in the mind bandwidth to come up with a particular design. They already have their design. They actually just wanted me to be an author to fit into their series. And so it worked out really well. I'm very excited. Not to say that it hasn't been a lot of work. It really has been a lot of work. In fact, I'd be happy to share with you on a future episode the things that I've done. You know me, I have to get my spreadsheets out. I love to track things. In fact, that spreadsheet has saved me time and time again because, there was a lot of our recipes in this book, and just being able to refer back to that. My spreadsheet has just been really helpful. Another thing I love to do is I love to create my spreadsheets with, it basically can calculate the percent done. So when I go back to the spreadsheet and I fill in, where I'm at, it actually tells me how much more I have to do. I don't know why, for some reason, that kind of inspires me and keeps me going. But anyway, I've been pretty busy with that and I am loving it. I'm really enjoying it a lot and feeling pretty good about, what I think will be the outcomes of this. As far as, sales and things like that, that's great. But I'm also thinking about just, I guess for me personally, it's been a way of, looking at the way I go about doing my food blog even, believe it or not, because it's been interesting to see how my recipes look in a big layout like that and comparing them one to the other. I can kind of see that I've not always been very consistent and I don't know exactly the best way to describe that so that you can understand what I'm talking about. But I've just noticed that over time, like when I look at some of my older recipes compared to my newer recipes are so much better, so much better. I'm more concise with my ingredients. I think before I just kind of played around and threw a bunch of things in the pot and called it a day and shared that recipe. Whereas today I'm very aware of busy people and how much they love simple recipes. And so my recipes these days are really more focused on more concisely, what are the key ingredients? What do we have to do to get this this recipe on the table? And so I'm kind of more focused on that. And I really actually like that. So this will be good for me because after I'm done with the book part, or, the editing part, I really would love to go back to my older recipes on my site. And I've been doing that a little bit, but I'd like to make it a big emphasis to go back there and just clean up some of those old recipes. And of course, the problem with with that, I'm sure you may have experienced this yourself, is that I changed a recipe once and then somebody came back and said, I really liked the way that recipe was before and now you've changed it. So what do I do? So, there's pros and cons to that. But for me, I feel like the biggest pro is that I feel prouder of the content. And therefore, when you're more proud of it, you share it more. Also, I just figured that, having a certain style of the recipe kind of helps people know what to expect. So again, the publisher came to me with some very specific rules of what they were looking for. So that was, in other words, what they wanted from the recipe itself. So they wanted, like so many ingredients, so many steps for each recipe. And I thought that's kind of brilliant to just have those things thought out. I mean, they have it for their series. And I thought, that would be kind of marvelous to have as maybe not a mission statement, but maybe some kind of operating statement for the blog itself, so that kind of keeps me having some standards. So anyway, those are some things that have been going on for me lately. I'm very excited. I'll keep you posted and probably do an episode here soon on the steps that I took with this book. But I think there's something else I want to talk with you about, and that is today's show. Today I'm talking with Jessica Gavin. Her site is by the same name. It's a food blog, and she's also talking today about her book, Easy Culinary Science for Better Cooking. I love this book, by the way. I mean, I think I'm always intrigued by the concept of science, and to see that combined with culinary, cookbook, it's just pretty cool. And it's like, we'd actually talk in this episode about rice, how you rinse the rice before you cook it. And she kind of just explains like why we do that. And so it's like maybe things that you've done for your whole life. Maybe it's kind of like tips that have been carried on through generations in your family. And then you start to see the science behind why that is the case. I just love that stuff. So I found this conversation very interesting. And I have to say, there was something else I loved about this discussion with Jessica, because I found myself thinking about it so much as far as my own personal journey with food, because I feel like my experience has been so different than hers. So Jessica talked about how she discovered a pastry shop when she was in high school, and that she loved it so much that she decided to get a job there. I compared that to my own experience, where I took a French class in high school, and interestingly enough, the teacher would love to have these little celebrations. And so on a regular basis, she would either bring in French food, or she would have us participate in these days where we would bring in dishes too. And I skipped those days. I guess I was so, I don't know, very focused on losing weight, and I was afraid of food, to be completely honest. So it's like, again, I'm kind of comparing myself to Jessica, where she sees this incredible pastry shop and she gets a job there, and here I am skipping the days that my teacher is bringing in French food. And I had very limited control when I was younger, especially around food. And I think that kind of scared me sometimes, I guess I would say. And so I maybe thought it would go out of control completely. In fact, I have, there have been times, like if there were Oreos in this house, I would be in the kitchen and I would eat an entire sleeve. Seriously, I'm quite serious. But today I'm really proud of myself, because I coexist with Oreos, and I honestly, I don't even think about them. Even if I do think about them, I don't eat them. I just want a round of applause for that. It really was a long time coming for me. And I wish I could just take a dose of who I am today and infuse that into my teenage self and be a little bit more like Jessica, because the idea of working at a pastry shop when you're in high school just sounds so cool, doesn't it? Yeah, I think it does. Anyway, I love talking with people like Jessica, because I could just see the pureness and the joy that she has for this passion with food. And I love that. And I find it inspiring. And I feel like the Marley today is kind of on the same page with her, because I have moments at least where I'm feeling like I'm in the same place, where I can have this passion for food and not feel like I have to eat it all. That's nice. Anyway, I love talking to people that, one, have that food security, but also too that, Jessica is just one of those people that she knew what she wanted to do from a young age. And I just find that so inspirational. It just seems to me, based on this discussion with Jessica, that she knew her career would be involving food in one way or another. I think she mentions in there that her main goal was to go to culinary school, but then she ended up getting a degree in culinary science first. And, just that pathway with food, it started at a young age for her, and it's just continued on. It's pretty inspiring. Obviously, she did decide to open up a food blog, and we talk about that and how she came about that decision. We also talk about her time and her schedule, because she works a full-time job in addition to the food blog and has a family. So her time has got to be, well managed to be able to make all that work. We also talk about the importance of owning your subject. Food blogging is very competitive, and Jessica and I talk about that, and how, if you know you want to blog about a certain topic, if you just really own that and become the go-to expert in that, it can really help you stand out as this highly competitive market in food blogging. So I thought that was a really good discussion, and I really enjoyed that. And we also talk about one of my favorite topics, which is investing in yourself. And Jessica just says, if you're the leader of your business, you should be investing in yourself. And she mentions how she wanted to take a course that would help her as a food blogger, and she kind of wanted to put it off, and her husband encouraged her to take it right away. I think that's such great advice, because if you think about the things that you invest in yourself today is knowledge that you'll have that can help you grow in the future. So it makes so much sense to just go ahead and invest in yourself. So I love that. I love that discussion. I just found this so inspiring, and I'm hoping that you will too. So let's get straight to it. Here's today's feature interview with Jessica Gavin. Hey everyone, I'm happy to have Jessica Gavin. She's of the site by the same name, and she's also author of the book, Easy Culinary Science for Better Cooking, and she's on the show today. Hey Jessica, welcome to the Chop Podcast.
Hi Marley, it's such a pleasure to be here.
Oh, I think it's a pleasure to have you on the show. I'm really looking forward to talking with you. Thank you so much. You sent me your book, and I got a chance to read about you, and also there's your site. It's just so much great information. I'm really looking forward to our discussion today.
Me too.
So I loved the story about your family history with food. I was wondering if you could kind of give everybody a little glimpse of, why your passion for food got started so young.
Absolutely. I'd love to share. Well, my grandfathers actually immigrated from China in the 50s, and they found themselves in the East Bay area of Northern California in a city called Walnut Creek, and they were rival chefs in a Chinese kitchen. So you can imagine the tension there, but I guess the funny thing that happened was my parents, were high school sweethearts, and they ended up getting married. So my family had to really resolve their differences and literally break bread. And I think that's the best thing about food, is that it really brings people together, in ways you would never imagine. So within my own family, it's just culinary, and the passion for it is just kind of ingrained in our DNA. So I knew from a very young age that I wanted to be involved in the food industry, and that food was my passion. So
yeah, I love it. It kind of sounds like a Romeo and Juliet plot.
Yeah, kind of. I think so.
Yes.
And I think it makes things a little exciting, but it was fun because my father grew up in they ended up having their own restaurant in Chinatown.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think that was really cool. I never got to see that side because they retired once all the grandkids were born. But he had this really interesting insight about food, and actually I think he saw my passion for it, and I think it made him nervous because he knew how hard it was to, work on the line, run a restaurant, run a small business. And I think he didn't want me to do it initially, but the passion was way too strong. So I just found a different way.
It's funny. My cousin, for a long time, he's retired now, but he sold I guess I would say like napkins and silverware. He was like a salesman that would do that for restaurants. And he talked about restaurant, he saw the back end quite a bit, and he just said that it's almost like a mistress. Like it takes away from a relationship even. Like it's so time consuming to own a restaurant and to work it.
Yeah, and I mean, basically my whole family had to work together at the restaurant, regardless if the kids
Wow.
wanted to or not, because they just
Yeah.
needed that help. And
Yeah.
so, everyone was in, but we kind of just found a different route, at the end of the day.
You're kind of lucky that you got, that experience from such a young age. You got to see the back end. I mean, I think a lot of us just experience food on the holidays, of us all in a group helping to cook and prepare it. And you're seeing it on a day in and day out basis. I mean, I say that sounds lucky. You may think, I wish I didn't have to do all that all the time, but
Yeah,
kind of
no,
cool.
it's a really unique experience. And, I think, understanding how much work and respect I
Yeah.
have for people who are in the restaurant industry, I think
Yes.
I just wanted kind of a different path for myself and see how I could help people in a broader way.
Okay, so there's another story in that you tell about your life that I really loved, and that is by I think you said by the age of 15 or 16 you were actually working in a pastry shop. Is that right?
Yes. So I wanted to, even though I had the resistance from my dad, I wanted to start working and I wanted to get experience in industry just because I had this really strong passion for baking. And there was a
Mm,
small, like gourmet European bakery right in my hometown,
mm.
right near my high school. So that was ended up being my home for a long time. So I worked there for 4 years with these incredible pastry chefs who actually used to own restaurants in New York, and then they settled in the Bay Area and took over a local bakery. So every day, opera cakes, focaccia breads, homemade brioche, fresh croissants would just be coming out of the ovens. And I
Ah.
was so inspired. I don't know how I didn't gain like 1,000 pounds because they definitely encouraged us to try everything so that we could, help sell the products better. So that was
Yes.
definitely a perk. But it's funny because, the chefs were like, just, we know you have, you want to be in culinary arts, but it's such a grueling job. You should definitely just keep this your hobby. But being as stubborn as I am, I still wanted to go to get my culinary arts degree, but I decided to pursue my bachelor's in food science instead. So for me, it was not a no to go to culinary art school. It was just not now, and I knew I'd always find a way to kind of circle back.
I see. So you were thinking, okay, I'm going to get this degree in culinary science, and then I will go get my culinary arts degree.
Yeah, I think it was one of those kind of milestone moments of like, okay, all my friends are, going into colleges and they're going to be at the dorms and this different part of their
Yeah.
lives. And I think I
Yeah.
felt like maybe I wanted to not miss out on the experience, but how could I still keep what I was learning like core to food? And I was luckily introduced to food science from one of my family friends, and I had never heard about it before. I heard about home economics and, things like
Yeah.
that in school, but no one ever talked about the fusion of food and science. And I was like, wow, okay, that it seems like a challenge because I was honestly never a big like math and science person. I was always much more artistic. But
Hmm.
I think when you find like a specific application of what you love to something that's a little bit more unknown, I think that's when you can really thrive and be challenged and, excel what you already know and take it to the next level.
Yeah, I love this. And I think it kind of takes me back to, this is a little bit of a side conversation here, but I think it's so important to expose children to these kinds of things. Like it sounds like, the friends, even the friends of your parents, like I wonder if we sometimes realize the things that we're doing in our lives. I mean, and let me just say it this way. I think it's very tempting to think that we have to be all about our children all the time. However, I just think that the things that we're involved with, the things that we're doing, the friends that we're making contacts with, they have an impact on our kids. And that's what I think I'm hearing from you is that, you have this really big influence, not only from your parents and your grandparents, but also from friends of theirs as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, you're as a parent myself, you're there to guide your children, but you
Yeah.
do have this incredible village or network of
Yes.
friends, that
Yeah.
want to help your family as well, but they have different experiences. And especially now, I'm feeling for my kids that in the next 10, 20 years, there's going to be so many more independent type of
Yes.
careers, like not the
I agree.
traditional, like I want to be a doctor and,
Yeah.
a dentist or whatnot. It's like, I want to be a business owner, entrepreneur, and there's different ways
Uh-huh.
to do that. And now that I have a lot of friends who also blog, I feel like, they can kind of glean like how that would be and maybe shadow them or talk to them about different career paths.
Oh, yeah, that's cool. I didn't even think about that. That's a great point that, kids coming up these days may not even be looking at the very traditional kinds of, education or the careers. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely am still a proponent of, continue your
Yes.
education,
Me too.
but
Me too.
I think just
Yeah.
the opportunities are kind of what you make it now. And I think that's really cool because I wasn't
Yes.
encouraged to be like a business owner. It was more like, oh, make sure you go to school and get your traditional
Yeah.
degrees and then get a paying job. But
Yeah.
now I'm like, okay, I'm feeling more like a millennial. Like I'm ready to take some risks.
Yeah, exactly. It's so funny because, I'm the same way. I think about college can be really the process of not only learning. So in other words, I think the subject matter is not as important to me as it is the process of learning and also just knowing that you can put yourself through certain things and that you can come out on the other end. I think that's important too.
Yeah, great point. I agree.
Yeah. So let me just ask you. So you got this degree in culinary arts or culinary science, I'm sorry. And then you thought you might go to culinary school, but then it sounds like you decided to get a master's degree.
Yeah, so it kind of was like a happenstance thing. When I was at school, I started to work at our local dairy on site, a campus. It was like a research facility, and I started working in the lab under the other master students. So I got to know the professors, and I really enjoyed what they were doing at the program. And towards the end of my senior year, one of the professors asked if I wanted to stay and, kind of do like a working degree where they actually, would pay for my schooling and pay for
Wow.
the time of that I would spend in the lab to do the research. And I would get to go to school and get experience at the same time. So I was like, all right,
Hard to turn that
yeah,
down.
I mean, no, I think when you're in college, you're like, I just want to get out and I want to go into the
Yeah.
real world. But I'm so glad that I stuck around and got a master's in, in agriculture and dairy products technology. So that definitely has helped me in terms of a food science career to move up a
Yes.
little bit faster.
Yeah. So you have a blog. Can you talk a little bit about what caused you to start your blog?
Absolutely. So I got a job out of college, working as a research scientist at a nutrition company. And then I
Mm.
actually had negotiated with my boss. I would join if they would support me to go to culinary school. And so within a year of starting my job, I was going full time culinary school at night. So once
Wow.
I finished that program, it took a few years, but I got, experience in industry. I had finished my culinary degree. And, my husband and I just had the conversation of like, okay, what's next? Do you want to continue being a food scientist? Do you want to be on the line and be a chef? Or what would you like to do? And I think thinking about the future and wanting to start a family and understanding from previous experience how much it took to actually like have like a storefront or work on the line and be a chef is really hard. I mean, they work long hours and honestly, like the pay isn't great when you start out. Um, that I decided that I wanted to stay in food science, but my heart was still kind of aching for something like an outlet for my creativity as a culinary artist. And my husband suggested to start a food blog, and he has a lot of experience from the tech side. He's run his own companies online. So I honestly thought he was crazy because I'm not a super tech person,
Yeah.
but we kind of just talked it out, and he said he would be able to, handle the website operations if I would, just focus on content creation and photography and, kind of just started from there.
I love that. So you're working together on the blog then.
Yes. So we are definitely a team. And I mean, I think especially, it's a challenge, I think, husband and wife, working together. But
Yes.
at the same time, we always call each other, we're the A team, we motivate each other. We
Aw,
understand, like, okay, if something's wrong with the website, there's a lot more empathy, or just the
yeah.
time it takes, to do each task. I think we really can rely on each other and support each other. And I've found that it's made our conversations more interesting, just talking
Yes.
about the growth and how to strategize about the business, and just kind of took our relationship to like a deeper level, which is really neat.
Yeah.
But he just really gave me this home, to express my creativity and in the bigger picture connect with others and help them. And I'm just so grateful for that.
Oh, that's lovely. I love that story. And, I think just, to give people, if they're not familiar with culinary science, I took one, part of a class on culinary science. And I don't know if everybody really understands how complicated it is. And so that I can totally get your desire to have a creative outlet because culinary science can get extremely technical, and it's down to the temperature of your oven and the way these chemicals are working together within the food property. Like even ingredients have their own chemicals, and so it,
Yeah.
it really gets very specific and scientific very fast.
I think the great thing, or maybe for me, because I get excited about culinary science, but the thing is, I think every time any of us steps into the kitchen and we start to do anything, we're measuring, we're, turning on the pan with the heat, like we are running our own mini experiments. So if just gradually start to learn little things about not just following a recipe, but understanding like why you're doing certain things within that step or that process, it's a game changer and it's really empowering. And you don't need to know like what are the molecules that's being released when you do, like do
Yeah.
this, like that's, I'll help you guys with that stuff, and it's just kind
Yeah.
of fun tidbits, but really just putting science into practice in a practical application,
Yes.
you just get it. Like it makes sense.
Right.
And when you're able to understand that, then you can kind of recreate the moments that you want from your food and what your expectations are. And I think that's where it's really powerful.
And I think you mentioned too, it kind of helps you understand why things go wrong or how, why things are like you mentioned something about your grandma's sticky rice, like, or maybe it was your aunt that
Yeah.
you understood why it works so perfectly because, you had this understanding of the science behind it.
Yeah, I was developing a recipe and my dad happened to be in town, and it was probably, I think, my grandma's sticky rice. And he's like, how is there science behind making grandma's sticky rice? And I just looked at him and I was like, Dad, like, have you ever wondered why you wash your rice, before
Yes,
you cook it? And he's like, no. And I'm like, well, you're rinsing off the starches.
the
And if you leave
starch.
them
Yeah.
in there, they're gonna, either clump together or stick together. And sometimes you want that. Like, so it's just that conversation of like, oh, like, it's just, he just is on autopilot, or a lot of times we're on autopilot for doing certain things. But if you really
Yeah.
step back for a moment and be like, why am I doing that? Then it's like, okay, the light bulbs go off and it's kind of
Right.
cool.
Well, it makes you think of the science that's gone on, like from mother to passed down to daughter, all of these years that, they're scientists and they just didn't name it that way. But, like, for example, I think of that recipe that came from the Depression area. It's called the wacky cake, where they didn't have access to eggs. So they learned to use gluten as the binder, and it makes a delicious cake and it doesn't require eggs. So it's like, it's kind of funny how this stuff just passes down, and they don't really name it science, but it really is science.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you don't need to be intimidated by science. It's really like what you
Yes.
said. It's that be curious and like really just play. Like don't feel like everything needs to be perfect all the time. Like at least
Yeah.
get a feel for it, and then think about like, oh, okay, I wonder why it worked, or I wonder how I could make it better, or why didn't it work? And I think that in itself is, going to help you just build your confidence over time, and make it really fun, to be in the
Yes.
kitchen.
Yeah, well, that's one thing I liked about your book is that each recipe has a little section, small section on the science behind the recipe that's just playful. You do it in a way that's playful and fun, but at the same time, I feel like I'm learning something. So that's very cool. It's a great book.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So I'm just curious. Okay, let's talk about website for a little bit because I think with your background, I know, Casey, we both worked with Casey Marquis on search engine optimization. And I
Yes.
know Casey talks a lot about the EATS program. And in case anybody else, I think it's EAT, which is what you need as a blogger is to show your audience and Google that you have the expertise, authority, and trust.
Hmm.
Those are three things that once your audience realizes that about you, they come back on a more regular basis. And I think with your background, you clearly have those three covered, don't you think?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I never thought about it that way, but that definitely is something I think about every time I create a post, for sure.
Right. And I think it's something I've been thinking about that lately, myself, just because, I do think, let me just say this. I think I got into food blogging for the creative side of it as well. And I don't think I took myself seriously enough as authority. That's even just saying the word authority has just taken me a while to get used to. Like, it's, that sounds so funny. And, but at the same time, I think if we don't take ourselves enough serious enough to become the authority in our topic area, that I think that maybe shows, in other words, let me just flip this. There are benefits to allowing yourself and encouraging yourself to become an authority, even if it's on just your little niche, that it helps your blog grow at the same time.
Absolutely. I think that once you feel like you're self-confident that, you know what, like this is my beat, and,
Yeah.
this is like what I want to focus on, and I really want to educate around, and I want to be like that resource for that specific thing,
Yes.
then that can help you really have that business person mindset and to strategize moving forward in the longevity of your business of like, okay, well, what are ways can I expand out on that? Or how can I really help, my readers more? Or like, what story do I want to tell and build and not just make each piece one-offs, but how they connect and grow from each other?
Yes, that's right. And I think it's too easy, at least, I think for me, for example, without the background in culinary science or culinary degree, I mean, I did go through a program and got a plant-based certification. So that definitely gave me some knowledge, but I still feel like there's a need to have really kind of own that. I love this perspective that you're bringing that, you really own culinary science and how to explain that in a way that's friendly and I feel like it's doable. It doesn't overwhelm me when I read it.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, even though I've always like I stepped into say like the blogging as like, okay, my niche is like food science or culinary science, but it really took time to like shape that up.
Yeah.
And like we were kind of talking about that confidence or just knowing like what your expertise is. I
Yeah.
felt like I just in the beginning didn't leverage it enough only because
Sure.
I think after coming from culinary school, I was like, well, I want to do elevated types of recipes. And, I'm not going to make a slow cooker recipe. That would be weird. We didn't learn about that in culinary
Um,
school. But I think as my life changed, as, going from being married and, not having kids yet to now having a family, my life stage changed and what I needed
yeah.
to make changed. And I feel like it brought me closer to my readers because then I could actually understand what they really needed. And I think so, just with your own personal experience and growth over time as a person, and then really nailing down and honing in on, okay, like what is your expertise? I think that really gives your business momentum and focus.
Oh, it's so refreshing to hear that you with even with your background, you struggled with struggled, maybe too strong of a word, but you had to feel comfortable with your knowledge and authority and how you were going to own that as well.
Yeah, and I think, even though culinary science is very focused, it was extremely difficult in the beginning to bring it down in terms of how could I make this approachable. So I've always put with my recipes a culinary science tip at the very end. And then
Mm.
over time, I've kind of figured out how to weave it in, to each post and into the writing so that it was this slow build for my readers. And now that I get feedback all the time from my readers and they like, the science part and getting that
Yeah.
extra tidbit, I kind of feel like, okay, like I know how much to provide without overwhelming and it just being this like, oh, aha moments, and what are the
Yes.
teachable moments. But,
Yeah.
that definitely takes time to figure out like what's the right amount. Cause no one wants to like open, be reading or feeling like they're doing homework, but
Yeah.
if you could
Yeah, that's
make it,
tricky.
yeah,
Yeah.
like really applicable to like helping them with providing solutions with their cooking, then it just, turning it on the other side of like, what do my readers need? What would help them? So just really putting them in the forefront.
I love that. And do you, I'm just curious, as you've been blogging, do you find that it's extremely time consuming or do you have it down to, a process that works really well for you?
It, I think it will always be time consuming,
Yeah.
but because I definitely feel like, I still work full time and I definitely feel like I work on the blog full time. But I think um, overall, like I've just found, yes, this process and this groove, especially, now that we have two kids of just, okay, it's a lot of tag teaming, just
Yes.
sharing at the beginning of the day, hey, what's going on? Like when we get back from work, what needs to happen and, carving out that time. But because I have less time, I feel like I'm so much more efficient because there's no spaces in between to be like, oh, well, I'll just do it later. It's like,
Yeah.
no, like if I do want to sleep tonight, like I got to make sure from like this time point to this time point, I get this particular task done for a blog post. And so it's just really being extremely organized in terms of an editorial and, you know, um, kind of doing that beforehand so that when I'm ready to create a blog post or, get in the kitchen, say on Friday when no one's here, I'm not kind of twiddling my thumbs and being like, oh, what should I make? It's nope.
Yes.
It's kind of been predetermined and I'm ready to
You got the
go.
ingredients. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, going shopping because that takes like
Yeah.
an extra hour. So
Yep.
just really like setting up the week on a Sunday, figuring out what needs to get done and just kind of executing against that and just being flexible too because things happen and family stuff happens, but at least having a plan at the beginning of each week.
So I'm just curious, what are some of the tools that you use to help yourself stay organized?
For me, it's just really simple tools. We actually like bought like a big physical board, a dry erase board that's a calendar. And every month I go in and I write down when I want to launch certain different types of articles. And so that at least keeps me kind of with a framework. And then I use my Google Calendar because I can easily move things around on there if things need to change. But I plan out all my editorial for, I think I spent maybe a couple days this year to just do a year of ideas and things I wanted to
Ah,
publish. And then I can
yes.
easily move that around in Google Calendar.
So you're saying maybe early on in the year, you have a day and you kind of, or two maybe, and you plan out recipes that you're inspired by, for the rest of the year?
Yeah, so I kind of think about, obviously there's pretty
Seasons. Yeah.
strong themes, that are going
Yeah.
on. Like, are there any major holidays going on? What's in season? And then you definitely want to post things before that timeline, because you don't want
Yeah.
to talk about, say, pumpkins, in October, maybe in September or at the very beginning, but you don't want to be late to the game.
Yeah.
So, and you can use that particular template for all, like every year, it's the basic, when are the key things are going on. But say if something like, right now it's like back to school,
Right.
so what kind of back to school meals would you want? Or what are good things for kids? But make it, obviously, um, to what your brand is and what you're writing about. But I utilize that kind of mindset and think about themes perhaps for each week or each month so that the content feels really cohesive.
Well, the thing that's great about that too is it does give you that time to, test that recipe. Like if you may be cooking pumpkin in April or what, just because you may have some time or that what recipes you're going to be looking at and you have that flexibility and time to work on them.
Yeah, I always feel so weird every year that I go and get like corned beef or something in like December. They're like, why do you want this right now? Or January. I'm like, well, St. Patrick's Day. So I have to
It's
like,
coming.
yeah, I like really look for that. Or cranberries, like they're not there right now, but once they hit the stores, then I know I'm ready to do some development.
Yes. So it's really nice to have that kind of plan because I feel like I'm one of these people. Like if I don't have a list, I will sit and imagine that I mean, it's like I completely forget that I have things to do.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I'm all caught up. But if
Yeah.
I have a list, I'm on top of it. I can really follow it really well.
Yeah, I mean, I think at minimum, because I know a year is a lot, and that's just something that over
Yeah,
time that I've like, okay, it'd be good
sure.
to create a strategy, but if you could at least do it a month out or 3 months would be ideal. Then you just feel like things are streamlined. You're just going. You're not spending time, thinking. So having like a couple days to just focus and think about like, what do I want to do for my business? Like, what do I think? What content would help it grow this year, or am I excited about too? And what do I want to share? I think it really makes you feel excited about the future,
Yes.
and you're not, wondering like, oh, what should I be doing? So it definitely is like a good time saving tip.
Yeah, and another thing I like about it is that I noticed that I had a lot of holes in my site. Like for example, didn't have enough breakfast recipes or,
Oh yeah.
very few muffins for some strange reason. So I love muffins. So it's a, it's a no-brainer to have more muffin recipes on the site.
But I think even like thinking, say, if you're doing muffins, like, okay, if you're really trying to drive, if you're becoming a muffin expert or a smoothie expert, in some
Yes.
aspects or that piece of type of content, how can that connect and build to each other? And, you know,
Yes.
like, could you start to share things like build more cornerstone content around, well, what's the difference in flours, and then like why you would use a certain, baking soda versus baking powder, like I don't know, kind of share more cornerstone content so that you really build that expertise in muffins, and
Yeah,
people
I
might
got
like you for
you.
that.
Yeah, it's an opportunity to actually learn about the making of that recipe rather than just, oh, I need more muffins. I can put muffins up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. In fact, I have actually had that in mind. Like, let me just say this: I spend too much time reading the news, and I've been trying to stop that because it's just too negative. I can't take it anymore. And so I've actually been trying to have nearby things that are like maybe culinary science, or there's a website that I really like to go to that talks about different ingredients and how they work together. So I think it's good to have some alternative reading ideas, and I think that's a good idea. I like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just curious how your workflow goes. So when you're working a full-time job and you have two children, on a day-to-day basis, it seems like you might be, there's a lot going on there.
Oh, yes, definitely. So when I think about, since I have my editorial and I think about recipe development, during the week, um, I try to, test my recipes basically on my family. Like, I'll make
Yes.
something for dinner and test it out just for taste and, cooking time and making sure I have all the techniques down. And then at the end of the week, I have one day. This is my golden day,
Uh,
that I feel so lucky to have it. But it's my Friday. The kids are in school and my husband Jason's at work. So that's like my full day to really focus on the blog. And then I also work on the weekends if, I didn't
sure.
get to, photograph something. So luckily my husband's there to kind of help watch the kids. But so I would say 2 or 3 days where I can really hone in and do content creation and actually, recipe development and photography and editing and writing the post. So I spend the weekdays, I would say, testing recipes just for dinner time. And
Yeah.
then I spend night times writing during the week, just because the kids are, in
Yes.
bed, and having that concentrated time is really good. And then the
Yeah.
weekends, that's when I'll do all of my photography and cooking and getting those things ready for the site.
Yes. And do you have a goal of publishing so many days per week?
Yes, I try to do a minimum of 3 recipes a week. So that's kind of my like, no matter what, like I got to do that many. Sometimes it'll be two, just in things happen.
Yeah.
But I try to target 3. I actually ran an experiment when I was on maternity leave. I actually took 6 months of maternity leave
Yes.
this year with my daughter when she was born. And luckily, she's just such a rock star. Like, she was a good sleeper. I think we kind of figured out like what to do from when we had our first child. So she was kind of being at home enabled me to like focus on the blog and spend time with her. So I decided to try 6 months of 5 times a week, and it was challenge.
I bet.
However, I think I just got in this groove, and because I could focus on my blog full time and I wasn't at work, I could really think about like what diverse types of content do I want to create outside of recipes,
Yeah.
and what themes do I want to do for the week. And so I tried that for 6 months, and it was really hard, but it was doable.
Were each of
Um,
those 5 recipes, or were some of them, things about food other than recipes?
Yeah, so being able to focus on the blog, I was able to create different types of vertical content. So besides just recipes, I started to do a lot more like how-to articles with step-by-steps, more what I call science tips. So like, say, why do your eggs turn green, if you hard boil them too long, and just really getting into the science behind that. And then also I started to do things about um, pantry items and just ingredients and tools. So I had multiple types of content that I could kind of pull from
Yeah.
and kind of package together. So, for example, if I was doing an Instant Pot post, I ended up doing a Instant Pot 101. And
Yes.
these take a lot longer to create because,
Yes.
there's more science. Like, it's just a different way of thinking, I think.
Yes.
But I would do an Instant Pot 101 post, and I would pair it with 3 recipes that week. Plus, if in the Instant Pot, say I was making quinoa or something, I would do an ingredient post just about quinoa and, what is it? What are the nutritional benefits? How to cook it? So it would essentially be 5 different types of articles and
Yeah.
always 3 recipes.
Ah,
So that was that in for me is would be the goal moving forward, is to be able to not just do recipes but do different types of content, but that all kind of link together and
yeah.
help each other build a story around the food.
Now your site is your name, so do you ever share posts that are things about, things going on in your life?
When I started, I used to do more blog post style. Right now, I would do, perhaps if it was like my kid's birthday or something, like something a big milestone in our lives, or
Yeah.
when I got married. But no, I kind of stopped doing lifestyle posts as much.
Yes.
Yeah, just because I was trying to figure out, okay, if my site, like, I do want people to get to know me, and I feel like maybe
Yeah.
through social media, and I love
I got you. Yeah.
Instagram stories, I can be a little more day to day real. But I
Right.
think I realized, like, for my particular business, I want to educate my readers and provide them things about more about cooking and cooking techniques and recipes. So I'll do it every once in a while, but it's not the
Mhm.
focus anymore.
I got you.
Yeah.
I'm just curious that you had the 6 months at home. Is it ever a dream of yours that you would turn this blog into something full time?
I think that's, for sure the end goal, because it does get hard to manage both, but I think right now, just being still young in my career in food science,
Yes.
I feel like I'm seeing things in a different way, being on
Yes.
the product development side for consumers.
Right.
So I get to learn about, what are the big trends that are happening? what are people, from a nutrition standpoint looking for, and then just kind of keeping my chops up with,
Yeah.
essentially like I'm a professional like recipe developer. So that, just kind of staying educated and staying connected within my industry. So I think,
Yeah.
yes, like I would love to take this full time eventually, but I still feel like there's a lot of that I'm learning,
I
just being in
understand.
industry.
I
Yeah,
think, it's also can be a source of inspiration, right? You're out and about and you're running into colleagues at work that are talking about some certain foods or they bring something in. It can be such a source of inspiration.
definitely. And it's so funny because a lot of my colleagues at work too, like follow different blogs. So it's great to hear like, oh, if they love a certain person and that happens to be one of my friends, or like I
Yes.
know, who they're talking about, or, they're buying cookbooks from bloggers. It's kind of this interesting like connection of like, okay, like science perspective, but like the practical, like people who are scientists are, do need to eat too. So they're,
Yep.
they're
Tuesday
going to
night, dinner's got to
blogs.
be on the table. Yeah.
Yeah. Or they tell me that they made one of my recipes. It's really
Nice.
cool.
Yeah, that is very nice. I was just curious when you were talking about that you switched to 5 times a week. Did you notice an impact on your traffic? Did that have did it increase?
I, it's, I think, it's one of those things where you don't see it right away.
Yeah.
But I would say, in the time that, let's just say in the, I think 9 months that I started doing it, we
Yeah.
have seen like an increase, like about 40%
Wow.
in traffic. So that's good. But I don't know if it's, uh, all because of the 5 times. So
Sure.
I think it's a lot of things because it, like we were saying, like my husband, he helps with, ensuring that the site's running smoothly, but there's also always little things that we're changing, about the site
Yeah.
to make Google happy,
Yeah.
So there's a lot of little things, but I would say obviously the more times that you post is just more opportunities for you to have exposure of your content and be picked up by Google and to be
Yes.
read by other people. But you definitely want to make sure that that content is still high quality.
Yes.
So if you feel like, for me, I felt like I could do 5 because I was completely focused. But for now, like I went back to 3 because it was just not manageable,
Right.
honestly, with my current work schedule. But so I put high quality into those 3 posts. So if I can't do more with high quality, I at least want to make sure I hit those 3 and make sure that they're where I want them to be before I hit publish.
So I want to restate that as I understand it, that it's important to publish frequently. It's good for Google. It's good, they see your site is constantly being updated. It's also just more content that gets out there and it gives your content has the opportunity to reach a greater audience. That said, you want to make sure it's quality. So if you're rushing to get something out that may not be as good as you'd like it to be, that's not a good idea. You really want it to be quality.
Yeah, and I would say like I've over the 6 years that I've been blogging, it was this incremental thing where okay, year one I might have posted once a week at most, and then when I started to get more excited and more serious about it, the next year turned into 2,
Yeah.
and then when I had my son, we kind of we're like, okay, like, are we going to take this really seriously and try to be profitable from the business? And what do we need to do? So since then, probably for the last, 3 years, I've definitely been posting consistently 3 times a week. So for me, that's kind of been my baseline. And it's just kind of one of those things where, you kind of find the right groove, but you want to make sure that Google knows that you're around, you're active, but you don't have to do 5. It's just it's an
Yes.
experiment you can run,
Yeah.
for sure.
Just as you were talking about cooking, right? We should have that same experimental mindset with blogging, right? Try different things and see what
Yes,
works for you.
absolutely. And I love that because that's the thing. You don't have to feel like, oh, if I don't hit 5 or if I don't hit 3, I've failed. It's like,
Yeah.
no, you find what works for you and you try to maybe commit for a certain amount of time and see how if that's something you could handle and you feel like you could stay at that high quality, then keep it going. But yeah, don't push yourself to where you're like you're not like a robot machine. You want to make
Yeah.
sure that, you have brand voice, personal voice in your writing, and that you feel really good about the recipes you're creating because people are making them and you want to be able to test it. So just, do what you feel is comfortable within your space.
I love that. Okay, so let's imagine you were having lunch with a friend today and they told you that they wanted to start a new food blog. What would you tell them? What would be your number one tip to give them?
Oh man. I would say definitely to, I really think you should, at this point, with so much competition now, there's a lot of bloggers, I think probably for food over 5,000, 6,000,
Yeah.
probably, if not more. Really just kind of knowing where you want to focus your expertise and building on that. But one thing is, as you start to make some, money, or at least you have money from your current job, don't be afraid to invest in your development. And what I mean by that is like, there's so many great resources that weren't available when I first started blogging that I would have loved to like jump on immediately. And that's, like Food Blogger Pro podcast, Food Blogger Pro, their forum and their community. Like if you are just starting out, to be part of, this community where you can learn about blogging and the basics and be connected with people who are just starting. I think having the empathy for each other and a support system is really great when you first start, because a lot of people, like friends and family, don't understand what you're doing with the blog. So that's one big thing. So invest in like, okay, a community that you can help you. Also, like taking a photography course. I did Lindsay from Pinch of Young's course. I did both of hers, and that was a big game changer for me, just because it really, like, I had no experience in food photography, and leaving that workshop made me feel like really excited about getting into that new skill set and practicing it all the time. So, and then also going to conferences.
Yes.
I was blogging for probably 2 or 3 years, literally like in a silo. Like I felt like I was this hermit, and I had no blog friends, no exposure to what was going on in industry. And I feel like if you could do perhaps those three things, upfront, like just investing in yourself so that you can build your skills to become like a really great blogger, like to build your expertise and that trust and that authority. And I think that when you invest in yourself upfront, even though it's like, oh man, do I have to pay a couple $100 to do this or that? Well, really the biggest thing is time. Like when I think about, okay, am I going to invest in this in myself this year? Because everything that I make from the site, I put it into this. It's basically research and development.
Right.
So for my site. So when I thought about the food photography workshop, I was like, oh, maybe I'll wait a year. And then my husband was like, why wait? Why wait right now? Like if you think about it, if you can learn a skill like sooner than later, that's the faster you can implement, the quicker that you can learn and feel confident in those skills, and the sooner that you can add quality to your site. So really it's that time. Like we all have 24 hours in the day, regardless if we're, J-Lo or Beyonce or the president, like we all are given the same amount of time to do something great. And I feel like if you don't take advantage of that time up front, then, it just will be more time that you're set back, and from advancing where you want to be.
Yeah. It's like make a commitment, know what you're going to do and just do it then, right? That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. I mean, you are the greatest asset to your business. Like think of yourself as a business owner. You are the boss of your website and your company. So, if you were at any other job and they pay for you to go to a workshop to enhance your skills, then why wouldn't you do the same for yourself, for your own business?
Yes. I love that. I also think about, somebody gave me this advice once. If it was your child and they were interested, would you not do everything to help them? So you should do the same for yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
If your kid's interested in soccer and they really are doing well at it, you would take them to every soccer camp they could go to. So you should do the same thing for yourself.
Absolutely. And I think, really, if you can, figure out what you want to be an expert in and how you're going to help people, then just be consistent with it and just focus on quality because you definitely don't want to compromise quality.
Yeah.
And if you're consistent, like for me, you know, every year I would say I've grown about, 40 or 50% in terms of page views.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where, and I'm not saying like I started like high off in page views, but it's that slow, grind, like being super gritty, but
Yeah.
consistent and just not giving up and continuing to hone like and own like what you're doing for your website. It just makes it makes it better and better. And then people recognize what you're about and why they're coming to your site.
Oh, I love that. Okay, I have just a couple of quick questions at the end of the interview. Are you game?
Sure.
Okay. What's one food item you can't live without?
Oh, I would say kosher salt for sure.
Really?
Yes. it is this like it's in basically in every recipe, right? But the reason why you're adding it is because it just naturally enhances flavor, right? And there's
Yes.
so many things you could do with it from brining,
Yeah.
to I mean, just adding that last touch, on your meal. It just is that one thing that like I buy boxes of, like when I go to the store, and it's like the cheapest thing, but it is that most important thing that you want, like in your recipe.
And what is your, why are you drawn to the kosher salt out of every different kind of salt that's out there?
I think for me, it's more of the size of the granules,
Yes. There's a
because
grittiness to it.
yeah, and it has like kind of a slow melt. So
Yeah.
instead of just getting the like iodized table salt that we all grew up using,
Yeah.
I feel like this has more, it's got some minerals still in it too. So it
Yeah.
has a little bit more flavor, but it has because the crystals are like they're not spherical, they're like
Yes.
little like rocks. It kind of has more surface area and then it melts differently. So it tastes different on your food.
Yeah.
And you can add them on the rim of margarita glasses.
Even better. Now we're talking. Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Okay, what's the favorite app on your phone?
Oh, my favorite app on my phone. Does it have to be blog related?
No, no. Mm-mm.
Okay. For me, I guess to keep my life balanced, I always prioritize some sort of fitness or exercise every day. And so one of my favorite apps is Nike Training Camp. And it's a free app and it gives you all different kinds of workouts depending on if you have equipment or if you want to focus on a certain body part or whatever. Like that is my go-to that I take with me like to the gym when I go travel. It just to me like wellness is such an important part of
Yes.
being a business owner because it's easy to just get into the work all the time,
Oh,
but you need breaks and you need to focus on your health. So I make sure that like that is my absolute favorite app to
well,
keep me
it's
on
so
track.
easy when you've got so many things happening in a day to skip the meditation or skip the workout or and yet that's really a very important part of your day.
Absolutely.
Love it. Okay, so do you have I'm changing this question lately because I keep asking people, what's your favorite TV show? But I also realize reading is important too. So let me ask you this way. Do you have a favorite TV show or a book? And if so, which one do you want to share with us?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so candidly, I don't watch TV because I have well, unless it's
Yeah.
like Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. Do we count that as
Yeah.
watching TV? Yeah. So the kids have taken over TV, so I
Yep.
don't watch that, and I don't have so much time. But for reading, um, I started actually subscribing to the Cooks Illustrated magazine. So every month, they have the little inserts, and that's how I kind of stay up to date on what are some cool techniques or food science that I want to teach. So I keep that by my bed and make sure that I take a peek at that so that it's kind of this learning experience every night and making sure I
Yeah.
stay on top of my game.
Oh, I love that. It makes me want to subscribe to that too, because it sounds like, like you say, you're investing in yourself, in your time, and what you're reading about. It's very cool.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, how can people find you online?
You can find me at jessicagavin.com and I'm, on all the social media spots. So it's just look for my name and you'll be able to find me.
I love it. Jessica, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with me today. I had a wonderful time.
Me too. It was so much fun. Thank you, Marley.
Thanks to Jessica Gavin for being my guest on today's episode of the Chopped Podcast. Be sure to sign up today for the Chopped Academy newsletter by going to chopped.academy and scrolling down to the bottom of the page and subscribing. If you like today's show and you want to pay it forward, be sure and head over to iTunes or Stitcher and leave a review of the Chopped Podcast. It really helps this show tremendously when we get that kind of positive feedback. And then who knows, maybe someday I'll read your review as a featured listener on the show. You inspire me, and I hope today's show was helpful and inspirational to you as well. Thanks for listening and have a great week.